Good evening, everyone. I'd like to welcome you to the February 27th meeting of the Rolling Hills City Council. Could we have a roll call, please?
Absolutely. Councilmember Black?
Yeah.
Councilmember Derringer?
Here.
Councilmember Piper is absent. Mayor Pro Tem Mersch?
Here.
And Mayor Wilson.
Here. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 4, presentations. I don't believe we have any.
We don't have any.
Correct. Okay. Item 5, approve the order of the agenda. Anybody interested in moving?
Move the item?
Do we have any guests that, I mean, I don't mean guests from the public, I mean,
We do. We do during old business.
did we move them up?
I think you'll get to it fairly quickly.
Oh, okay.
unless-
Okay.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Who's the second on that? Thank you.
Blue folder items.
I would move the blue folder.
Second.
Discussion? Any?
Can I ask a question? Will we get something in the blue folder, like when there's a change in the minutes? Because I noticed the minutes were
Yes.
changed. Is it highlighted anyplace anywhere, or can we easily see what the?
It is not highlighted, but I can start to do that if you would like.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
And
I
same,
would find that helpful if the rest of the council
Sure.
would.
same thing for the bills, trying to compare spreadsheets.
The only change in the payment of bills is a city manager's signature, which I had notated to you last week. So but that's the only difference on there.
Oh, so there's no difference in
the agen-
checks or
yeah,
payments or
The
anything?
agenda it's exactly the same, it's just Elaine was on vacation, and so this one has her signature.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. It's unanimous. Now, that brings us to public comment on non-agenda items. Are there members of the public that would like to speak? Fred, come on up.
Alfred Visco, 15 Century Road. I know I and others, especially Don Crocker, have discussed this many, many times. Both the association and the fire fuel committee of the city. I don't know if I put it on the record here in city council yet, but it's been discussed for years. And that's the Schultz gates, which would give us additional access and ingress and egress outside of the city. Don Crocker has taken the lead on that in contacting Mr. Schultz, and there seems to be some confusion about exactly what, if any, protocols are set up to allow those gates to be opened by the fire department or the sheriffs. I just found out tonight that there's supposedly going to be some kind of a meeting held in December or after the holidays concerning about that. And I don't know if that meeting ever occurred. Johns Canyon, as you know, had multiple trees came down, and there's emails that I have access to which indicated people were not able to even get into the Johns Canyon or get out of Johns Canyon, and they were trapped. They couldn't contact the Schultz to see if they could get their gates open. This is ridiculous. This is patently ridiculous. It's been brought to everyone's attention, both the association and the city, numerous times. Are we going to wait till somebody dies because they couldn't get access out of this city when it's so easy to have it in that area where you could have that extra access? Is that what we're going to do? We're going to wait till there's a wildfire and a whole bunch of people die? I mean, totally unacceptable. As you may know or may not know, we had an incident on my street, on Cintring Road, which brings me to a larger issue. We had an incident on Centring Road where there's wires that go through a giant pine tree on my neighbor's property. I'd actually complained to Edison a couple months ago through their portal. I said, you know, your electrical wires go right through this pine tree. And, you know, one day, you're going to have an issue here. I got a phone call back from some dude at Edison who said, don't worry about it. There's plenty of clearance, not a problem. It's low voltage. We don't clear any more than what we did. Sure enough, the winds came, knocked a lot of the branches down. Next thing I know, the fire department's on the front door telling us that it's smoking and that the wires may or may not be completely down, but it's smoking. And we're gonna shut you off. Don't go out. Nobody's coming in, nobody's coming out. We're gonna yellow tag it. Well, sure enough, Edison eventually got out there, and of course, they had to shut it down for a couple hours to repair the line. This is an issue that needs to be constantly brought to Edison's attention and the association, because most of these are in the roadside easements anyway. This also brings me to a larger issue. Why in the world is this city allowing large vegetation along our roads, which if they're toppled for any reason, can completely block a road? Why is the city allowing this? Again, are we going to wait till somebody dies because they can't get medical care? They can't get out to get to a hospital, or medical care can't get to them? Or God forbid we have a wildfire and we're trapped, all right? I love trees. Everybody loves trees. But you don't have to have vegetation that's so large right next to a road that if it falls, completely blocks the road. You don't have to have that. You can have smaller trees, or no trees at all, or cut them back, so that if they topple, at least they don't block the whole road. That's my rant for the evening. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Are there other comments from the public? Or-
Thank you, council, for having us here. We're Darren and Nicole Tangent, 10 Johns Canyon. So we were on the road affected Friday night. And it's really some of the related points that this other gentleman was raising just now. The Schultz Gate clearly should have been in use that night. I don't know why it wasn't. I don't know what that arrangement is, but that really should get fixed. But the main trees came down about 10:30 at night, and I was at our house, so I was stuck on the house, you know, the Johns Canyon side. I went up, and initially there was nobody there, but maybe about 11:30, or 11:15, 11:30, the fire department was there, confirmed the power had been shut off because the trees had come down over top of the wires, and I assumed they were gonna start a clearing process. We had another tree down across Johns Canyon, down by Claudia's house. So, you know, it's about midnight, I've got the chainsaw out, I'm clearing this tree down at Claudia's house that's across the road, thinking that this, you know, number of trees that had gone across the power line up above was in the process of being cleared. So I finished up down below at about 2 in the morning. I drive back up, there's no one there. The tree's sitting there across the wire. There's nobody working. And I was like, okay, well, maybe they had to go get some fuel, like, I don't know. I come back at 3 in the morning, nobody. 4 in the morning, nobody. 5 in the morning, nobody. So finally at about 5:15, you know, Arnie and a few the wonderful people that work for us here in the community are up there and starting to figure out what's going on. And a tree service company shows up, I think at around 5:30 a.m. And it takes them until about 7 to finally open the road. So it was literally a 9-hour closure where no emergency vehicles could get into Johns Canyon. Nobody could get home. I believe the Grays behind me here on Morgan Lane were trying to get home that night. They couldn't get home. Our daughter was out for the evening. She couldn't get home. But from a life safety standpoint, as you can imagine, for 9 hours to not have ingress or egress, we need a better protocol for tree removal where access is being restricted because of a fallen tree into a dead-end street like ours. Like, if a tree goes across Crest, there's options, right? You can get in and get out through different gates. But when a tree goes, and there's plenty of dead-end streets in Rolling Hills, we know that. Just happened to be Johns Canyon this time, but like, we need to have a 24-hour on-call emergency tree removal service that will show up at 1 a.m. We have to pay them 2x, 3x, whatever it is. They got to get the road clear, you know? Because the other thing I learned about this whole process is that Edison, they showed up, made sure the power was off because the trees are over the lines. I thought they'd just stick around and wait, and we're all working as a team to get this thing, you know, cleared and get our power back. They take off and say, call us when the trees are cleared. So now we're in a waiting game where not until the trees are cleared, which took till 7 in the morning, that you then try to call Edison, which we personally were the ones that called them. They said, well, we'll put you in the back of the queue and we'll hope to be out there by 3 o'clock. You know, we ended up without power for almost 24 hours because it took us so long to clear the trees. That's not the most important thing. The life safety ingress egress is the most important thing for sure. But we just need, you know, an access through Schultz Gate or, you know, these emergency access points. Like, we got to get this figured out, because if a tree had actually fallen into somebody's house and somebody really needed, you know, help from the emergency team, it wasn't coming. It was not coming that night. So, anyways, and Nicole's our zone block captain, and, you know, we were trying to keep everybody informed that night as best that we could, but it was, you know, it was a struggle, and it was frustrating to keep going up to the site, the main site, and not seeing any action, you know. The fire department left too, right? The fire department left, Edison left, and no one showed up until 7 in the morning. It's crazy.
So as a block captain, this was the perfect storm in a way, because everything we're trying to do was sort of happening all at once. We are trying to always, you know, present different ways of taking care of yourself in case of an emergency. And I think everybody, the 30 families in that area that were affected by this, felt pretty secure in their homes dealing with the power outage. I know that because I contacted a good handful, well, not a handful, about almost the majority of them I put a group text together to let them know what we had learned and that we weren't going anywhere, and so everybody could make their plans. And then we made sure that if anybody needed help, we were there. And all the other neighbors kind of rallied to say, we're here to help as best we can. The fact that we couldn't get out, that's the first question at almost every block captain meeting when we present to our zones. What are the routes? How are we gonna get out? And we sit there and can't really point them in a direction. Even with the fire department there, they kind of can't say anything either because they don't know which way the fires are going. But here we weren't even dealing with a fire and we couldn't get out, you know. The rest of it is, you know, that we were able to communicate through this way on text. So I think they're going to be talking a little bit later about the siren program as well. There are people that don't have a text system, not an email system. And at one point I thought maybe I should walk up to those neighbors and check in on them. But it was blistery cold. I had asked all the other neighbors who know people in the neighborhood to make sure that they could, if people weren't on this list, to check in with them. But, you know, like, you felt helpless. I think we all felt very helpless.
And I think all of this touches on a bunch of subjects we've been talking about for quite a while. Cell service has to improve. right, for sure. Maintenance of trees, like, I love our trees, I don't wanna see them all cut down, even the ones along the road, but they've gotta be maintained. 100-year-old eucalyptus trees that haven't been trimmed ever in their lives are gonna fall over. So you've gotta maintain the trees.
Power lines.
Okay, I'm gonna have to ask you to wrap it up here, so
Yeah,
if there's others
so
that want to speak.
anyways, I hope there's a response this time, because it was a massive failure Friday night.
Yeah,
Massive.
I know you're frustrated, and a lot of us experienced issues, not as severe as you did, but many of us experienced discomfort and beyond, obviously, as you did, being cut off. I think many people, if not most, realize that the resources that the city has are limited. We don't have a chainsaw. We don't have staff to operate a chainsaw. We rely on the association for road maintenance and road clearance. And one thing we can do is communicate with them, which we were doing that night. We had good communication amongst the council members, and that was being relayed to the association, who ultimately was the ones that came out and cut the tree. And then Edison, that's a different story. We don't have direct influence on them. They're a public utility, but we do have, I should say, we do have influence. We can't control what they do, but we have the right people to call and to express the urgency. Certainly, they had a lot of urgent matters that night. And, I'm not saying that the fact that you were blocked in was not urgent, but there was a lot of moving parts to what was going on that night. Again, I want to stress, as much as we would like the council members and the city staff of 5, I believe, right now, none of us have the resources to go out and clear roads. That's not something that the city has the authority to do, even if it had the resources. So I know it sounds like we're passing the buck to the association, but that's the reality of the matter. That's who maintains the streets. That's who we pay our assessments to for that service. Whether they provided adequate service over the weekend, that's subject to debate, obviously.
What is the fire department's responsibility in this situation?
Okay, I'm sorry, but I probably spoke too long anyway. It's not an agendized item, and we can't
Yeah.
get into a discussion
All
on
right,
this.
well, hopefully
Mayor
nobody.
Wilson, could I ask a question on that?
Sure.
Okay. Is the Schultz family on your text list?
They are not, but we have people that were calling.
No, but, so someone spoke to Schultz?
They couldn't get in touch with them.
No.
That's why the gate
That's all.
couldn't be opened.
Okay, next, Mr.
Can I
Gray?
say just one thing?
Yes.
To the tangents. What you did was really great. We really appreciate it. I heard about what was going on Johns Canyon from Nicole's outreach first, and then I found out you were out with your chainsaw in the rain and doing the other tree, and when I went down on Johns Canyon Saturday morning, I saw where you had cut what you did. The block captain, the not being able to get out, that's a whole issue, but the communication that the block captain system is supposed to have, you guys did a great job, and including, our staff and us and what you were sending out. When I say us, I mean the council members. I found that very helpful, and you guys were really wonderful neighbors, and we all appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you.
Gray?
So my name is Mike Gray, and together with my wife Susan, we live at 2 Morgan Lane off of Johns Canyon. And the first thing I want to say is, we have never had a block captain like this pair. So I like just a round of applause, because I think they were over and above on the night of this incident. But we've had many meetings, and I think one meeting, the last one we had at Nicole was chairing. We had the sheriff department and I believe somebody from the fire department. And both of those individuals, when we talked about the Schultz Gate could that be made available during emergency, and both of them said, absolutely. And I just assumed that there was some agreement. And if there's not, there's not many entrances and exits in this city. that is an entrance and an exit. And certainly, we don't want to, take their property rights away from them, but on the other hand, I mean, if we determine what it is to have an emergency, what constitutes an emergency? Is it a fire where life is at stake, or something like this where it potentially could have happened because the street was closed and there was a live electrical wire? And that's why they couldn't do it. So we came back that night, and the road was closed, and everyone could not do anything. There was a lot of people there, fire department, the association, but there was a live wire, and no Edison, so they couldn't do anything. So that could have lasted until Edison got there. But my point is, we should have either a committee of the association and the city to approach the Schultzes and figure out a way that we could have a situation where we could use that entrance as an exit or an entrance, depending on the emergency, and determine what it is to be an emergency, and perhaps indemnify them for, any untoward thing that would occur during this exodus or entrance. We're not talking about that many people. In this instance, there was maybe, 20 families, is that it? 31 families. Well, it could be, it could be the entrance at the Crest Gate would be having a fire. And that'd be a lot more people potentially could be, get out of the city in an emergency. So I think we should look into that. I thought we always had a way to do it, but I think we should do it, and this was a good lesson for us, where it really could be very, very valuable. And I don't have anything else to say, but thank you very much.
Thank you. Well,
Thank you.
for reference sake, I live at the last house on Portuguese Bend Road myself, which is not an entrance to the city, not a public entrance at least. There is a way to meander down the hill, Burma Road, if you will, but the property owner there has not given permission to use their private property as an escape route, for example. So I'm not quite sure. I have never spoken with the Schultzes, so I couldn't say what they would agree to or not agree to.
Well, I mean, I don't understand, talking is cheap. I mean, this is a situation that's come to your attention, certainly it's come to our attention, that this could be a life-saving situation. Luckily, it didn't happen that way. We could be on the other side of this thing and something really terrible could have happened. But to basically bring him in and just say, well, this happened, he was not even aware, he may have been out of town or whatnot, and that this occurred. But I think the city and association should get together and just find out if he could see it being feasible in a bona fide emergency.
Okay, this is something for us to discuss with staff.
Right, well, I think, anyway, I think it should be studied.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
will you come up?
Sure.
Can I just address the Schultz Gate in terms of conversation with staff to date? I think it was 3 years ago, the block camp program started working on an evacuation map for Rolling Hills. And I think that's when the focus was really trying to automate the Crest Road East Gate. At that time, there was also conversation about the Schultz Gate and whether it can serve as an additional ingress, egress point. The first responders had told us, and first responders, I mean LA County Sheriff and LA County Fire, they advised the city that they would not see private property as an official ingress egress point, like the Crest Road East Gate, for example. But if residents in the area, in the community, wanted to have an agreement with Schultz as a private property owner to be able to use that as an ingress egress point, provided some stipulated condition, they could do that on their own. So where the city was involved was also talking to Mr. Don Crocker, who's another resident, who personally reached out to Schultz, Mr. Schultz, and Mr. Schultz did get engaged with city staff. This was last December, as Mr. Visco said, and Mr. Schultz was traveling out of the area, and he said that he will contact staff when he gets back in town. So that was the last correspondence the city staff had with Mr. Schultz, where he was supposed to discuss with us whether if he would be open to having his private property open to nearby residents. Now, we never had that meeting. It never occurred. There's no plan at the moment. And I'm not sure what Mr. Schultz's position is on that.
It seems to me that the city could, I guess, participate as a facilitator in an agreement or a discussion between residents. It's all between residents, really, or property owners. So I think that would be something that we should further discuss. We can't, like you mentioned, property rights. We can't just usurp property rights, and the first responders don't want to seize the property. I mean, this is some pretty serious discussion here. It's not an informal, or it could be, but not involving the city, I guess is my point. So let's further discuss this.
Okay, sounds good. Sorry. Interrupt.
Excuse me. My name is Jack Manchurian at 5 Johns Canyon. So we were also obviously impacted. My son coming home at night, he drove up and realized, access was, there was a tree in front. So he said he recognized there was a down power line. So we told him, don't take the chances. And basically he went and stayed at a relative's home. But regardless, also there's another situation here where, you can have down trees where they hit power lines and bring power lines down, or you can have down trees where they, impact, ingress and egress. So, in our case, we had both. So therefore, all those residents were out of power. Okay, those residents who did have generators, they were able to, I guess, kind of, keep things going. But those residents did not have a generator. They were impacted from 10 p.m. or so until the following day. I think it's like 4 p.m. when power was restored. So I'd like to suggest one thing is, how about in terms of certainly we can take action with trees, we can remove them, we can trim them, we can do all kinds of things. But also I'd like for the city to consider undergrounding power. I know that a number of years ago, some of the residents on Johns Canyon, we kind of looked at it. We kind of looked into putting together a district. There just wasn't enough interest, so it kind of died. So certainly there was a project on Portuguese Bend. There was undergrounding. It looks great now, and certainly all that has been mitigated in terms of power lines and and trees and things like that. Also, I believe there's another project going on Eastfield where there's a lot of undergrounding going on. So certainly what I would like to bring up is the idea of undergrounding. Certainly Johns Canyon, given its situation, I think at this point maybe some of the residents would be interested in reconsidering undergrounding the utilities there.
This has always been a high priority of our city council, and we do have 2 projects underway right now, one on Eastfield, one on Crest. We're at the limit of our funding. We don't have any additional funding. Don't know when we would receive any more, but certainly residents, and we would be happy to facilitate this. Residents can form a utility district. It's a long, complicated, and frankly expensive process.
Right.
And we had one come before us a couple of years ago, and it got to the very end, and unfortunately it failed because of the costs associated with it,
Right.
I suspect. So
Yes. Yes.
we would be happy to help you through that process if you can find, it takes, more than a few neighbors to agree to it.
Yes, I understand, yes.
But if you can find neighbors that are willing to, go for the long haul, it's going to be a couple, 3 years at least, the process to approve it, then the construction starts after that.
Right.
But
Right.
it's quite a process, and I know Elaine would be happy to discuss that with you.
Okay. I understand there may be funding from the state or other government agencies and things, so.
We're always looking for
Yeah.
grants,
Right.
and we've cobbled together some very valuable grants, hundreds of thousands of dollars. We've received
Yes.
funding from our county supervisor. And Edison plays a part in that too, but we've exhausted all of the current opportunities right now.
And the grants that we did just get, that the mayor is referring to, had very specific, they had to be used on major thoroughfares,
I see.
I'm gonna say, and so that was why Eastfield and the end of Crest got it, as opposed to any of our other individual streets, but it was very specific
I
that it
see.
had to be used on
Okay.
those two grants for major thoroughfares.
Okay, well, maybe we can
Yes, I'll
certainly
reach out.
talk. I don't know, maybe these grants get renewed on an annual basis or something, so we can kind of, we wait, okay, well, okay.
Elaine has done a yeoman's job in finding grants for us. She's done, millions of dollars worth of grants, and they're not available all the time, or sometimes, they're very infrequent, but I know she's always on the lookout for them, so
Okay.
she would be
Thank
your
you.
best source.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Come on up, Gene.
Gene Honbo, 33 Portuguese Bend Road. I'm a big proponent of lessons learned. And I think things that happened over this weekend, there are some real lessons learned here, and we should look forward instead of looking backwards. Number one, I think, was communications. Communication was very poor. I don't know when the first city official was informed of the tree falling on Crest Road West and the tree falling on Johns Canyon. But I think it was a lot later than what the association was informed. Certainly, the association did their work. They were kind of slow in some areas because of issues of power and so forth. But I think that somebody from the city has a lot more say-so to the utility companies, the fire department, and so forth. So I think that's got to improve the communications when we do have a problem. So that's number one. Lessons learned. What can we do and make it better? Lessons learned number two. In the past 4 years, the block captains, we've been concentrating on exit routes of the major roads: Eastfield, Portuguese Bend, Crest Road East, Crest Road West. We kind of forget that there's a lot of streets here in the city that are dead ends. And I just wanted to name a couple of them. Southfield, a lot of homes on Southfield. One exit. Chuckwagon, Johns Canyon, Upper Blackwater, just to name a few. And we've got to address those like we did the main exit. In fact, we have to really look at it because there's no other way out. Even if you live on Portuguese Bend, we live on Portuguese Bend, which is an exit route, and we can take all the other exit routes, but the people on dead-end streets, they have no choice. As far as, Pat, you mentioned, well, the trees, that's an association issue. I think this is a safety issue. I think this is an issue that going forward, we got to work together on this thing. So we just can't say that's an association issue.
I'm not disagreeing with you on that, Gene. Like I said, at the risk of passing the buck, because I get it.
Real safety issue. So my two thoughts: lessons learned on exit routes and on dead-end streets, and number two is improved communication, and particularly here in the city. A lot of time passed before something was really done, hours. And so, I don't know when you first heard about it, everyone here, but,
I first heard about it from Nicole's.
yeah.
No, that's not right. There was a email, Dwelling Live sent
Yes.
something out before I got.
That was about
Nicole's.
11 o'clock.
So that was the first notification that I had that goes out to every resident.
Well, that's registered
have
for it. I was
service.
just gonna say, I hope
service.
everybody in this room is registered for the emergency notifications, because that's where I was getting a lot of my information from. So just putting that out.
We got the notification, but there has to be somebody involved in solving the problem. And we're not equipped to solve the problem. We can't, we can call the fire department, we can call the utility companies, but we don't have much say-so, not as block captains. So anyway, those are my 2 lessons learned. Let's move forward on them. Safety issue. The exit routes, excess vegetation is a safety issue.
Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Arlene Honbo, 33, Portuguese Bend. So on the one item that I would just like to add to Jean, you heard about the block captain's involvement with the evacuation routes. In fact, Leah was involved with us when we were having discussions with the fire department. And I would humbly submit to the city council that you guys have a lot more influence on the fire department with their evacuation routes. Because way back when, which was in 2019, when we were talking to the fire department about enforcing the fire code for the 10-foot easements, at that time they were not enforcing that and were reluctant to do so. We asked them to do an evaluation of our evacuation routes on Eastfield. They had 0 recommendations for any tree trimming, which we challenged them. We, the block captains, challenged them on that. And after a lot of discussions, they finally agreed that, yes, there was some work that could be done on Eastfield. So today, fast forward to today, our humble opinion is that the fire department could be a lot more aggressive with these trees on the 10-foot easements, consistent with what Fred Visco and Darren are saying in terms of the trees. The fire code is clear to the sky, but they have some words in there that the fire department can choose to decide. It's up to them. They apply judgment. Well, we think their judgment is just a little too lax when it comes to the trees. And as Darren mentioned, some of these trees have never been trimmed. I live next door to a property where there are trees that have never been trimmed, and one of them fell. I don't know how tall it was, but it was a huge tree that fell. So my point is that I think that the city council, along with residents, that we could encourage the fire department when they're doing their annual inspections come June, that they really need to look at all the road easements, and they need to continue to, be aggressive in terms of trimming those trees. And I would welcome having this on the one of your agendas for the city council, where you bring in, Chief Bennett and ask them about their intentions in terms of the roadside easements in the whole spirit of lessons learned. Because there are a lot of trees that could be trimmed. Okay. Unfortunately, I have a couple of other, just 2 more points that I'll make quick. Part of the blue folder item, the block captain submitted to the city council a letter, and I just want to make just a quick comment on that. We understand the motion that the Siren project was delayed for a month. We believe that these items do not have to be serial, that things can happen concurrently, that members of the city council can participate in the Peninsula meeting, and at the same time, you can complete the analysis for the outdoor siren project. You could see with our letter that, we have a lot of block captains, residents, your constituents, who have been watching this project for quite a while, and we're not naive. We know that you guys need a lot of information, and it's going to take you time to gather all that information so that you can make a decision. And we are realistic. We know that, you know, you guys haven't even had a vote to say whether there's 3 of you that want to even move forward with this project. So we just would, we humbly request that you make this as important to you as it is to us. So that's just my comment there. And then lastly, there was a proposal that Councilmember B. Derringer brought at the last meeting. I have some quick comments on that. I didn't get to read it ahead of time, and so at this point, I've read it, and I just want to make a couple of comments on that. One is, and I know and I recognize that the City Council just received and filed it, but my humble opinion is that when someone brings an unsolicited proposal, that's not the end of it. So we'll probably hear more about this Genesis proposal, like, should we be bidding on, reopen the bid? So my comments is that I read the proposal, and it seems like it's a comparison apples to apples. There's 3 locations that this other company is proposing, but the pricing starts at HQE's High Point up to $1 million. They also claim that they can link to the Zone Haven software. My personal opinion, this is not a block captain opinion, this is just Arlene Honbo's opinion, that the proposal is over 3 times the cost of HQE, and maybe you should feel blessed that you have this proposal that was unsolicited, because now you can take comfort that you have a very cost-competitive proposal. And you don't need to open it up because, you know, you have one that's 3 times the cost compared to HQE's. And my last comment is just that I personally don't think that linking to Zone Haven is worth the cost. I went online and Googled what is Zone Haven, and basically I learned that it allows community members, for example, to find out what the evacuation routes are. So, you know, if we have a direct connection to Station 56 or our firefighters, we only have 3 exits. We're not like Malibu where they have, I don't know how many miles. Maybe we don't need that. Anyway, it was never documented as a requirement for HQE, so I don't know why we would add a new requirement. So back to, you know, the analysis on behalf of the block captains, we would just encourage you to move forward and make a decision. And to that last point, we are also very realistic. We know there are cost considerations. We know that, you know, you may not have the money to implement such project if you decide to move forward on it. But like many of your projects that are on your capital improvement projects, they stay there for years until you're ready to spend the money. So we're not asking you to implement it tomorrow. We're just asking you to make progress on a decision.
Thank you, Arlene. Any other public comment? Seeing none?
Is it for just a different agenda item? Or
No, it's for non-agenda items.
so I can bring up something else?
Yes.
Yes.
If
Okay.
This is a comment that's not an item on the agenda, right? Okay.
Yeah. So Judith Haynell, 31 Eastfield. This is something very light. I'm obviously here also in support of the block captains and the situation going on this weekend, but I've spoken to Elaine and I've spoken to Kristen of the association, and the Senior Needs Committee has supported the, to maybe put on the agenda at some point to do a lending library here for the community. Very light, total opposite of what we've been talking about tonight, but, you know, just, it's something that I brought up a long time ago and just kind of revisiting again, and I'm sorry, I don't really get on computers to write letters, so I'm just here verbally asking if you would put it on the agenda. And Elaine has, I don't know, so I don't know how much research I need to give you. Elaine has said that she, in the past, has had some familiarity with this and what the cost might be. So I don't know what the next procedure would be, but, or how much you need me to research the cost, or
Well, it would be appreciated if you would collaborate with her on the subject, because I don't know anything about it.
Okay.
You know, we'd have to have, to be on, excuse me, to be on the agenda, we'd have to have a staff report or presentation of some sort. So it sounds a little premature, but it's, you know, I like the idea, and
Okay, so the next step is just to get the information together and bring it back to.
I would say bring as much information as you can possibly gather, you know, make it easier for the staff. You know, if the staff has to spend time researching something like this,
Right,
it's
I just
gonna.
didn't wanna move forward if it's not something that you guys would even consider. There's no
I'd
point
be
in
interested
wasting
in
the
hearing about
time, but if it's something, because also now we have a mom and tots group, and so it would be nice to have something for adults, not adult reading, but adult, you know, but for the adults and kids
No
and,
bad
and
books.
just, you know, have something here, because not everybody gets to the libraries and stuff, and
Yeah.
just
No,
thought it'd
I'd be interested in hearing something more about this.
It kind of got put on hold because when there was talk about redoing the whole campus area, but we're just talking about a box on a pole that can get moved, so.
I've seen these before. I've
Yeah.
seen some my business is in Wilmington, and I've seen what nonprofits do. They just, like you said, they put a shelf out in front, and amazingly, books get exchanged, and, you know, nobody just takes the books and leaves it empty.
Right.
It's a lot of trading going on.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that there was some interest before we pursued it and spent our time on
Mhm.
it, so, okay, all right, thank you.
Thank you. Last chance for public comment, non-agenda. All right, I'm going to close the item, and we're going to move on to the consent calendar. Thank you all for coming tonight. Okay. Does anybody want to pull any items?
Just item 8C, please. C as in Charlie. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. 8C as in
C.
Charlie.
I would like to pull 8G.
Me too.
Okay. Anybody else? And is there a motion for the remaining items?
I would move the consent calendar with the exceptions of 8C and 8G.
I'll second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. 8C. B?
All right, I would ask as to 8I. I listened to the tape regarding the discussion of the HQE, what was going to be presented at the Peninsula Safety Committee.
I'm sorry, you just said something about
I?
Isn't it I? H-I? 8I?
I think it's in the minutes.
8I on the minutes.
Oh, okay.
8I, which is the item on the minutes.
Okay, got it.
Sorry. So basically, I listened to very long discussion, but in any event, there was a question that was raised towards the end that our mayor was asking, I'm not sure what he said what the motion really consisted of. And so then at that point, there was a question, we had Mr. Horvath say, well, the motion was to table this item to March 13th and have the city manager gauge interest in Peninsula Siren System and give a report. And that's when Mayor Wilson said, well, this report would be, she probably has material prepared, and this, meaning the Genesis information, was new material. And that's when Councilmember Piper spoke up and said, she's not going to report on the new material. She's going to mention that there's others companies, such as the company B just brought up, that works with the system, referring to Zone Haven, and appears to be substantially more money. We don't know anything else about them. And then Councilmember Black said, and we can hand them this information. And so with that, Mayor Wilson said, do you have the direction that you need or want? And that's when City Manager Jang said, yes, I believe so. And so that was included in the motion. So that's when we took the motion and it passed with that understanding and explanation about what was going to be said at the meeting by City Manager Jang.
So what
I
part of
thought
the,
you were presenting
I'm gonna be
she was gonna
presenting
talk
the
about what we've
material.
done, and you were presenting the new company.
I'm gonna present the material, and so I think that was the distinction was being made, is that Councilmember Piper was saying she's not gonna report on the new material, but she's going to mention that there's other companies
Right.
such as,
But you're gonna do the report.
and
on
I'm
it.
gonna do the
Right.
report on the,
So what's the problem?
no, it's not mentioned in the minutes, and there's been at
These
a.
kind of minutes, nothing's in them.
Well,
So
I
why does it
understand,
matter?
but there's been an email that was, maybe you didn't see it today, in which, because of the way, I guess that the minutes are fashioned, it was interpreted that there was not gonna be any report, or there was not gonna be any provision of information that I was requesting just to be provided through our staff to the committee so that I could make a report on it. And that's all I was doing. And in my email, I said, please forward this to whoever the person is that's getting the materials together for the committee. And if for some reason you can't do that, let me know, and I'll forward it to them. But I'm just saying, it looked like from when I listened to it, that yes, you had added, provide the material to them. So, and that's, with that understanding, we voted on the motion, and it passed unanimously. So that's why I was wanting to
So
amend.
what do you want to add?
I wanna
Let's
add,
say
okay.
You're gonna present some stuff.
I was going to add it based on what this said. I can present it on my own. I can do that.
Right, that was the plan.
Anyway, but all I wanted was the information to be provided to them. So I'm not having to send an email out and say, please, can you put this in? Because there's a protocol, for the staff to do that with the other staff.
How many
that are-
people are at this meeting? About 4? Why can't you just,
Two for six.
six, there's 6 people.
Well, six.
Hand them the stuff and present.
Well, but then they won't have a chance to review it ahead of time. Normally, we give them materials, and they have a chance to look at it, and it's not, and it's gonna be by Zoom, so you have to have it beforehand.
Zoom sucks, so
Well, I
that's your
know
own
that,
fault.
but that's not,
You should tell them you don't want Zoom anymore. Long past Zoom.
well, I understand, but
Long
that's
past
the
Zoom.
way those meetings go, so.
Well, you gotta, that's the first thing to do, is get a decent meeting.
Leah?
I would just like to add, and I also went back and listened to it, and I also have a memory of what was discussed, was we clarified that the proposal that we had wasn't a solicited proposal or anything like that, and that the city manager would not be presenting on that. And I tried to clarify that with you, and Jim said, B can say anything.
She can say anything she wants.
And Jim said she can say anything
Of course she can.
she wants. But that was not in relation to what the city would be presenting. That's,
Right, if I may, Mr. Mayor,
Please.
that's kind of the issue here, is whether or not the direction to staff was to provide the additional Genesis materials, i.e. the unsolicited proposal, and I believe there were some subsequent clarification emails to the public subcommittee through staff or through Councilmember Derringer, and we also need to take public comment on this item. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Any public comment on this item?
oh, I needed to.
Hold on.
I'm sorry, mention what the addition would be.
Okay, apparently not.
What were you asking?
Is there any comment on the item we're discussing?
Okay, I can hear that.
So
Okay.
go ahead.
So my proposal would be to insert where, right after the word HQE, and say, and mention that there's other siren companies such as Genesis which interfaces with Zone Haven, and provide the committee with this Genesis information and gauge interest from other peninsula cities at the March 9th, 2023 Public Safety Committee, just to correspond to what was said.
I honestly did not listen. I saw these emails go by, and I agreed. What a giant waste of time.
Okay, let me,
So the reality is, no, if we're having discussion now,
Well,
this is my
want to
discussion.
get a second, and then we can
For
discuss.
what? A second
For
for
a
what?
motion.
For the motion to amend it to conform to what was said, just what provides the direction.
So, would anyone like to second B's motion?
Oh, just bring the stuff, B.
Oh, okay, well, all I'm saying, Jim, is that
Okay.
you,
Okay, wait, 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 wait. Let's, let's,
That's all I'm trying to say.
I've asked for a second, I
Yes.
haven't got a second, so unless somebody speaks up quickly, the motion dies. Okay,
No, I want you to bring the stuff.
Well, but I can't give it to them on a Zoom meeting unless
Okay,
it gets
is there a-
sent to
Get rid
them.
of Zoom.
is there a substitute motion? For 8C?
Serious. Get rid
Okay.
of Zoom. The fact that you're doing such incompetent meetings, of course you're gonna have
Well,
garbage in,
the
garbage
whole
out.
point-
Get a
okay,
decent
let
meeting.
me,
Council
if I could
members,
just.
council members, is there, it's already, the motion has already died for lack of a second, so
Okay.
now I'm asking for a substitute
No,
motion.
Jim second. I thought Jim seconded.
I didn't,
Oh, okay. So you don't want to incorporate your part of the motion?
I want you to bring the stuff, like we said.
I'm going to speak on it.
Council members, we're moving on.
Okay.
Is
What
there
what
a-
was the substitute motion?
I'm
The
asking
substi-
for one.
Well, the substitute, it's a motion relating to the minutes.
You wanted to change the minutes. We haven't accepted this item yet
Okay.
for the minutes. So essentially, I need a motion to approve 8C at this point,
Okay,
unless
so-
somebody else has a motion besides that, or a substitute
All I'm
besides that.
asking, okay, all I'm asking is for it to conform to what was said as a explanation to the motion made by
B, I
Councilmember
don't-
Piper.
B, you've made the motion, there was no second, and we've moved on.
All right, well, what is, maybe I could ask then, if there's a issue with the language, is there an issue with the additional language to make it,
It's been
Shorter or
discussed.
something?
You've heard what the other council members have, their thoughts on this, so.
all right, well, then if
Again,
there
I'm
wasn't-
calling for a
Okay.
motion for, if nobody wants to make a motion, I'll make a motion to approve 8C as presented.
Second.
All right.
Can I make a substitute motion that
No.
it also,
No, I don't accept a substitute motion.
well, if I make a motion that would be over,
Okay. Then
Yeah, so
you
the-
may-
so
may
you-
make-
you-
you may
you-
make-
yeah, if I may, Mr. Mayor, so, once again, what I hear the mayor say, a friendly amendment is not accepted.
That's
And
correct.
so, for you to make a substitute motion, you would need to make a motion and get a second, and then we would take a vote on that.
We'll just vote no on his thing.
okay,
fine.
well, I'll
It'll
propose that, I'm trying to, okay. In addition to the language here, I'm saying, and that Councilmember Derringer will present the information on the Genesis system.
And I would just second that.
Right, further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion fails.
First of all, I've already, was talked about that, we're gonna do that, so I thought that,
Okay, we're going back to my motion now, which
this
has,
is not, this is a motion to amend the minutes.
I know it, and it failed.
All right, okay, that's fine, I know what, I'll have to indicate
I
to the
can't,
other cities.
It's
why
the math,
this is
B, I
happening.
mean, if that's the will of the council, then it is. So, okay, my
Okay,
motion
that's
was to accept 8C as presented, and there was a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 No,
No.
Okay, well, that motion fails too.
And so, at this point, I guess I would, step in and say to the two who do not want to approve, is there any other additional, language that would be?
He said exactly what we said.
Okay.
That's it. He said exactly what was said and discussed and voted on, that she was gonna come and present. That's exactly what we said. So I'm voting with B.
I don't think the way the
It's
minutes are
exactly
written
what we said.
precluded her from doing that, though. But that's not what I got out of them, at least.
Well, I guarantee that's what it was. I was there, I did it, I made the motion, and we discussed this at great length, that B can come and present it, and Elaine's not gonna present it, and B is.
But there's nothing in the minutes
Well,
that,
because there's nothing in these crappy minutes, you know that. These are crappy minutes, and we've done that so that we can have crappy minutes so the city doesn't get sued. And they're awful.
well,
and,
two council members, not including me and you, have gone back and listened and heard what they heard. So we have a situation where we have an item that was discussed at a prior council meeting, and we can't get approval for the minutes to reflect the discussion. I don't think I don't see anything that prevents B from distributing materials like you mentioned.
well, all I'm saying is that I agree with Jim that it was agreed that I would do the presenting.
I don't,
And
but
at
I don't
this point,
see
we're
there's a
talking-
disagreement about that.
Okay, if I
Do
could
you-
finish,
do you-
Mayor.
Mayor.
No, because I need to make my point that hasn't been responded to. Is there anything in the minutes that prohibits you from doing that?
In terms of prohibiting me, no, but in terms of reflecting what was decided, yes. Because it was decided I would present, and then now we're in, and that the information would be provided to the members of the committee. The provision of the material is through staff. So that's all I'm asking staff to do. I'm not asking them to say anything about it.
Okay, so we have basically an impasse on a minutes item. I mean, I've never faced this before, so.
I would, once again, I see the math, I'm not dumb. I would maybe, plead to the two, is there any level of language you may accept that is a bit more clarifying to get to a result? Of course, if not, that is your prerogative. Excuse me, my understanding, there's no mandated legal requirement that we must approve these minutes at this very meeting. Obviously, we are missing a fifth member, so that there's no, obviously, we don't want to wait months and months and years, but there's not an urgency. This is not like an impending deadline, or
Bring this back in a month?
we can, if there is an impasse, now, of course, and Councilmember Derringer, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe the meeting, this Public Safety Subcommittee meeting is on the 9th,
Correct.
which is before the next meeting, so I guess it
Well,
would
next meeting is
seemingly,
gonna be the same.
be moot, so, right. No, but I meant the point there would, that subcommittee meeting would occur prior to the next council meeting, so it would seemingly be moot whether or not
Well,
the direction.
My understanding is that I can present the information, I can give the information to the other staff members, and, or send them directly to the council members with an explanation as to why I'm sending them. So that's my prerogative.
And so I would echo Mr. Mayor's statement. I don't read these minutes as precluding you or prohibiting you from doing that. So that's, yes, that is.
They don't
yeah,
reflect what happened. I'm voting no.
Totally fine.
I would make a motion that we hold these until we have 5 people, because we're going to need that to break the thing. And be, as we said at the meeting, and we don't say, as Jim said, that these are action item things. We all agreed that we said B can say whatever she wants. What we direct staff to do is different than what B can do. She can say whatever she wants. So I think you say and present whatever you want. There was discussion on whether or not this was a solicited bid. Were there any legal issues about it, or how they were, was it even a valid bid or whatever? So I would make a motion that we hold this until we have 5 people, because we ultimately do have to approve the minutes in some way. And I'm not seeing any change to this that
And that's fine.
Okay,
The
hold on,
person
hold
who
on,
made the
hold on. We
motion
have a
will be
motion.
here.
Let me see if I can get a second. Is there a second?
To hold the minutes, yes, that's fine.
Is there a second?
Because they're
Okay.
not correct as is. So we're gonna have to
okay,
redress them.
There is a motion to hold the minutes till the appropriate council meeting in a second. Any discussion about that? Because that's what we're talking about right now. Okay, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you. Opposed? All right. Okay, we're moving on from 8C, and we're going to 8G, and I will yield to you, Leah.
No, I'll yield to you. You pulled it first.
All right.
Nanner.
So my only comment on this was, and I don't think I'm too late, I hope I'm not too late, but we still have the generator in the shed.
Yes, we do.
We should not dispose of that generator prematurely. And by prematurely, I mean, first of all, I know that you've researched to see if there's grant funding available for the replacement of it through the, I always forget the name of that program.
Carl Moyer.
Carl Moyer, right, okay.
Which didn't you tell us it wasn't?
Well, the last thing I saw from staff was maybe, along with the consultant.
Yes,
From my hold on a second. From
Yep.
my sources, I'm getting the indication that it's not. It's for on-road use, okay? There's always exceptions to these programs, so it may exist. My point is that, and I'm pretty sure for this program, Carl Moyer program, you have to trade in your old piece of diesel equipment. And I would hate to, even though I don't think it's available, if there's a chance that there's funding available to us and we forfeit that funding because we had the old generator hauled off, I don't want to do that.
Okay,
So I saw reference to that in here about, you know, the cost of
yeah,
funding it and hauling it
yeah.
off.
Well, if you recall, and I'm just gonna do a refresher on council's
Maybe
actions.
before you do that, Leo, what was your comment?
Well, notwithstanding what we do with the generator that's here, we've been screwing around with this thing for over 2 years. And I don't know, I appreciate this report. I don't know what Councilmember Piper, if he has met with the liaisons from the association or not. If so, I don't know what the decision was or what the conversation was. I don't have any feedback on it. And now we're sitting here, we still don't know, we're putting it off. I would like to see us, we have to make a decision on this, and I would like to agendize this for is it March 27th meeting, when he will be present, so that we can discuss it. And I just think, to me, it's embarrassing that we haven't gotten further on this at this time.
Okay.
In response to Mayor Wilson's point about not removing the existing generator, council's direction to staff was threefold. The first was to remove it. And we put out a bid to do the removal, and there were no responses. Staff went out again recently, and we just held a job walk on Thursday, not last week, but the week before. And there were interested parties. I believe 2 or 3 4 potential bidders is interested in the removal of the generator. So that's out and about, and we should have pricing for you we should have pricing for you at the next council meeting. So to your point, Mayor Wilson, if you decide not to go forward with that, I can understand, and when we bring the pricing back, that's when you can take action on it. Okay. The second point is the Carl Moyer investigation. There's a category called infrastructure that we think would be eligible to fund the project, but the premise of the infrastructure category isn't taking an existing diesel device and trade it in and then get some money out of that. It's an energy project where you have a project that supports your infrastructure that's using renewable energy. So that's the angle that we're trying to.
So renewable, not another diesel.
Yes,
Okay.
that is correct.
That's a part of the Carl Moyer program that I have no familiarity with. So
Yeah.
I know on the truck side, you trade in an old truck.
Right.
And they give you a couple $100,000 to buy a new truck.
Right.
But
Right.
you have to have that trade-in to be eligible for it. So
Correct.
I just didn't want to forfeit that, and I didn't know. So-
No, you're absolutely right. So we looked at that category about the diesel like for like, or diesel for cleaner diesel, or some,
Cleaner gas, natural gas.
some cleaner gas. That wasn't a category that was eligible on the generator side. So we're really focusing on the infrastructure, and unfortunately, we haven't gotten an agent to tell us one way or the other, whether if it's eligible or not. So I'm just holding out hope that it could be.
Okay. And that's a state program, isn't it?
I think so, through the local AQMD.
Okay. All right. So is there a motion to?
Public comment, Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, public comment. Anybody want to talk about diesel? All right. Okay, bring it back. Is there a motion to receive, or to approve item 8G?
I'd like to bring it back. I'd like to get it
Yeah,
agendized.
Right, no, that's not, I'm not precluding that. We're just going to approve the minutes of this, but your point is taken about bringing that back basically 4 weeks from now.
I will make that motion to move 8G.
Okay, is there a second? Okay, second from Jim. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now, for an hour and 10 minutes, we're past the minutes, and we're into excluded consent calendar items, which we already did. Commission items, apparently none. Public hearings, none. Old business, 12A.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Tonight before you is a continuation based on action taken at the last meeting, specific to the newer sinkholes near 1 Middle Ridge Lane South. Tonight, we have with us, as requested, James Bleeker from EC Construction. He would have been here in person, and that was his intent, but there were 3 more sinkholes that showed up this weekend, and so he was actually in the city late this morning with myself out there on site, so he was unable to come back this evening. So he is on Zoom right now to hopefully answer any questions that you may have. In your blue folder items tonight was a revised bid proposal based on some of the conversations we had last week where we were worried about, well, what could those costs look like at a maxed amount. He tried to work that up and also had realized that there was a shortage in the estimation of the linear feet for the lining, so he fixed that. But when we were on site today with the addition of the sinkholes, he did mention that all of these estimates now we have to start from scratch because the appearance of multiple sinkholes means that there is the potential for the pipes having lost their connections at couplings, and so his recommendation to me this morning, which he could talk about a little bit more, is that we may need to re-video the inside of that and see where we're at, because this is going to take a little bit more fine-tuning before it can get lined properly. So, James, I don't know if you are...
Before you do, I just want clarity. You said there's 3 more
3 more sinkholes.
independent sinkholes since we
Correct.
met 2 weeks ago.
That's correct.
And are any of the sinkholes exactly on places where we've already replaced, where we've already done repairs?
The 3 sinkholes are all in the easement that is adjacent to the Popovich property. So we did replace CMP, the corrugated metal pipe, in one section of that area. I can't say with certainty, but as we were kind of walking the site and looking at it this morning, it appeared, just from my recollection, that it may be above where we fixed the pipe and below where we fixed the pipe, and then one of them was much further to the north of that. So I don't think it is definitely not where the replacement pipe was, but it is within the vicinity.
I went out there and walked it today as well, and it looked to me that it was above in the place. But again, without seeing exactly where it was, I can't remember that. But
Correct, yeah.
I mean, the whole thing seems like it's just failing from the whole line.
I think as we saw in the video, or in some of the screenshots that you saw a few months ago when we were discussing the video, the vast majority of the system, is compromised, at the bottom of the corrugated metal pipe. So it really is just a matter of time before, as James also said this morning, where the pipe sections connect, there is a coupling around them with bolts, and over time, and this system is clearly very old, those couplings can deteriorate and rust, and then once they do, it really just allows those pipes to separate, especially if there is continuous weight pushing down on them and the leakage underneath that's allowing for them to slip. So with that said, I don't have anything else to report. This is really an opportunity for you to ask questions of the contractor and of staff if necessary. So James, if you can unmute. Make sure. James, can you hear us?
Can we go on to the next item and hopefully he'll show up?
I see his mute thing flickering there, but.
James?
Oh, it's got to stop. Can you work on the connection as we go on to the next item?
Oh, looks like his signal dropped off.
It's a new thing. We've never done this before.
Okay.
All right, so we're going to move on to, sorry.
12B?
Yes. Who's going to attempt to reconnect?
I'm trying to text him right now to see.
Okay, so we're doing 12B, is
Yep.
that correct?
Yes.
Good. Go ahead, who's going to present it?
I think that's also
Is
Christian.
someone presenting the items so
Oh.
we can keep moving, please?
I'll present the item.
Please. I don't want to wait for someone. So go ahead.
Item 12B is the discussion on the replacement of the three-rail fence, which is just in front here, along Portuguese Bend Road on the way to the main gate. Council asked that this item be agendized this meeting because at the last meeting, there were ladies from the Women's Club that asked what happened to the three-rail fence. So in your staff report, staff gave a history of the evolution of this matter. Starting in August, the Women's Club Beautification Committee came and spoke about it and commented on the terrible condition along the area. And then in September, the council gave us a direction to work on the matter. And then, so I won't go through all the iterations, but at the very last time that the council spoke on the issue before last meeting was in October, where the item was on giving a contract to a provider to maintain the City Hall campus. And at that meeting, I think council discussed the fate of the three-rail fence, what we were going to do with it, and drawing on records and minutes, also recordings. Council's direction to staff was to wait for staff to develop an improvement plan for the entire campus before deciding on what to do with the three-rail fence. So that was one question that was brought up at the last meeting. And second was Mayor Wilson wanted to talk about what to do with the three-rail fence at that point. So it was a kind of a history, kind of bringing back us what the issue had evolved into, what your last direction to us was, and then also take into consideration the Women's Club's beautification committee. So tonight, it's just a discussion amongst you guys as to what you'd like to do, the next step, if you wanted to change your direction to us from before.
Okay. Questions for Elaine?
I do. So, have we received a draft landscape plan yet that would talk about the area around the fence in terms of the sprinkler system and what, if anything, was going to be suggested about the roses in that area?
No, we have not received a plan, and no, there have been no discussions about what to do with planting palette, I think that's your question, around where the three-row fence was or where the roses are today.
And don't you think that if we're going to, I mean, in terms of doing a fence, we should have a knowledge about what the proposal is and an agreement with the council about that proposal before we embark on putting something there that might actually cause problems to whatever the landscape proposal is that we approve.
You didn't approve a landscape proposal. You approved a service provider to maintain the campus. At the last meeting, however, there were proposals from Bennett Landscaping to hire Rick Deisel for, I don't remember, $2,500 to draw up a plan from a subject matter expert as to what should take place there. And no, we have not received it today.
Right, well, that's only 2 weeks ago.
Sure.
I'm just saying, I think it's probably good to get that in place before we make a decision about whether, and find out whether that's going to conflict with whatever the proposal is.
If that's your wish, I think I was just,
That's a comment, not a question. This is
Right.
a question period.
Yeah.
So are there more questions? I want to move this along.
Okay, I'll open up to public comment. Come on up, Sue.
Beth and Judy, I'm Sue Halls, 6 Upper Blackwater Canyon Road, with no access out. Judy and Beth are out of town. So they felt that they had approval for replacing this fence. They feel it is very unattractive, the broken-down fence was unattractive, and left the way it is unattractive. And they were hoping that the process, just for that fence, and perhaps for the area between the fence and the road, could be rehabbed and probably would not be changed with a campus, total campus landscape. But it does affect everybody that's coming into the city. It is an eyesore, and they are hoping that you could do that area as they proposed. The ground cover is jasmine, and there's some dead spots. I mean, it's minimal in the area down to the road, and they had some nice Douglas iris that just need to be divided, just a little bit of care to dress it up as you come in the city. And it probably doesn't need to be part of the whole campus, which I think we really need, as you know. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Sue. Okay, bringing it back to council, discussion.
So I also was under the misconception that we were going to be doing the fence, not waiting on the landscape plan, and there's no reason we can't just put in the darn fence. And fine, we'll landscape later. So I actually would make a motion that we direct staff to get bids and get the fence in.
I would second that. I agree that I don't think you need to wait. If you need a fence, you need a fence, and then you put your sprinklers and other things where they need to go.
You can, right.
Okay, so I would agree with that as well, but I just want to make sure we're talking about a fence only and no other items associated. I mean, we're going to put up a fence and, you know, hopefully in the same footprint as the prior fence, which would line up with the rose bushes and, you know. I guess that's what we're talking about right now, right? Just put up a fence, okay.
The only caveat, I mean, I understand the reasoning for that, and it would be great to have the fence up. The only question I have, and we have somebody that's contracted out to put a fence in there. They may not always end up putting it where the prior fence poles were, and if there's gonna be a damage to an existing sprinkler line, then we're gonna have another emergency repair. And then, so the idea would be not to wait a whole terribly long period of time, but to get this landscape plan in progress soon and to focus on that area first. If they need more time for the rest of it, but so that we can actually make some plans soon for that area that won't interfere and cause us additional costs that we didn't plan for.
I made a motion.
Can I call for the question? There's a motion and a second. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
I'd say, no, we need to wait.
Okay, thank you. Did we get a connection with James?
he is back on. So James, if you can hear, can you unmute?
Back to 12A.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes. And everybody should just know, James has poor connection where he's at due to the storms and stuff, so that's why I think he's having some issues. James, were you able to hear the original staff presentation before you lost your signal?
I think I heard most of it, yeah, what you were talking about, yes.
Okay. So then, as we just said, the council is here to ask questions now of you. So, Mayor Wilson, I would just leave it to you in your direction.
So, James, did you want to speak before we ask questions? Did you want to speak before we asked our questions? I mean, did you have something to present to us?
Yeah.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, Christian, can you repeat it? I can hear you better than I can hear the mayor.
Sure, the mayor was asking if you had, if you wanted to make a brief presentation on the issues out there and some of the things that you have, yeah.
Yeah. So basically, from the time that we went out there and did the first repair, which was a year ago, I think is what we figured out this morning. The pipe is obviously, the bottom of it is gone from about 4 to 8 all the way down that whole easement along the top of this residence from top to bottom. So my recommendation when we were out there before would be to line the pipe, to do the line that would be the least evasive and probably a little more cost effective than removing and replacing the pipe. That was my initial, I guess, response and what I told Christian in the city. Now that we've had the storm and all the water's come down and there's these 3 sinkholes that are out there and then, maybe more that will happen over the next couple of days with the rain. Anytime there's a sinkhole, it generally means that now that the pipe there has been displaced, so it's either collapsed or it's broken off from a connection or whatever. So now the lining isn't possible at those spots. You basically have to go in and with repairs and replace the pipe in those locations and then come back and line it. Unfortunately, the only way to really do that is, I heard what Christian said from the beginning, is to go back in and video it and find out when the video goes in there how many spots are actually displaced. Maybe that all 3 of them are, maybe only 2 of them are. You just don't know, but unfortunately, I think that's the only, that's the smartest thing to do at this point, is to re-video it and see what areas have collapsed and what areas are going to need to be fixed, because those areas are going to have to be fixed first before you can even consider doing the lining now.
Fair enough.
All right, questions from the council?
I did have a question. The item that, can you hear me okay? Can you?
Yeah, I can hear you,
Oh,
yeah.
okay. The item that you have for the lining the pipe, if we do the lining, I'm understanding what you're saying now. If we do the lining, it doesn't end up removing the other item that we had put in, you had put in the proposal for fixing the pipe at the location we had before these 3 new sinkholes. So that the lining does not prevent or like take away from the work of having to fix it if it's not been a breakage of the pipe, or yes or no? I'm just want to get clarification on that.
So the lining, if you do the lining will fix, from any further breakage of those areas of the pipe. Is that what you're asking, or in the current condition of it?
Well, what I'm trying to find out is, we had a prior breakage that there was a estimate for, and we did the video of it. Is that something that where there was not a situation where you could line that area, and so we would be able to save the cost on that particular break that we already know about and have videoed with a lining, or not?
Yeah, so the price that I originally gave Christian, that we had a video that the county did, and that video didn't show any displacement of the pipe at all, except at the very top of the, I guess it would be the south end of that easement of the Popovich's driveway. So that would have to be fixed no matter what, which is included in that original price that I gave. But everything else in that pipe, there wasn't any more displacement. It was just that the bottom was gone. So it pretty much, the whole thing could have been lined the way that I laid it out in that proposal. My worry now is that now that there are 3 sinkholes, that there's a chance that in those 3 spots now, because of this big storm, that now those pieces have collapsed, which are going to need to be fixed, which isn't part of that cost proposal that I already provided.
Okay, so
are you talking about, there's a item we had for 33,600, and talks about 2 sinkhole areas. Is one of those sinkhole areas the one you said that is collapsed and the other one is not?
No, because that price, that original price was just for the 2 areas south of the Popovich's driveway. That didn't have anything to do with the lining, that was just to go in and fix those 2 areas, which were, then when I went down there, I don't know when that was, Christian might know better, that was probably 3 or 4 weeks ago that I went down there to give him the price, I gave the price for that. So that's totally separate from the lining, that was just to fix those 2 spots, just like we did the spot a year ago, last February.
Okay, so my question is.
Nothing to do with the lining.
Okay, my question is, can those 2 spots be fixed with lining if there's been no change since the last video? If we take another video and there's no change, can those be fixed without spending the 33,600, but just including it in the lining of the whole pipe?
Yeah. Yeah, so you wouldn't be paying the 33,000 proposal would be out the window, and it would just be the price that was included with the lining.
Okay, that's good. That was what I was trying to figure out. We could save that at least. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I've got a question. You said the county did the videoing for us. Elaine, how much did we pay for that? Do you know?
9,000.
Video?
Yeah.
I believe it was, I'd have to go look, but I believe it was in the $2,500 range for the video itself.
And we would rely on them to do the same thing for presumably the same price?
Well, so we could go to county again. I will just remind everyone that last year, about this time, when there was storms and whatnot, county was not very fast in responding to us because their resources were just applied all over the county.
That's what I'm trying to understand.
So-
Should we rely on them or not? And
Well,
if not,
I
then-
think we can ask, but I did ask James if they were able to also do that
Okay,
themselves.
so that was my next
So
question.
that we could figure out what was the most expeditious manner to.
Mayor Wilson, I don't think the county will be reliable to deliver the video to us timely.
I get it. So what would the cost from James be to do the same service? James?
Yeah, I talked to, I made a call today to them. I didn't get a price from them, but I can tell you we use them a lot, and it's usually in the $2,500 to $3,200 range, and they should be able to get out there to do the video probably, I would say, within the next 2 weeks. He was gonna confirm for sure, but that's, I think, a reasonable timeline as far as they're concerned to do it.
James, who is they?
They're a company, their name is Ancon, it's a company that I sub out to do all my pre and post video, videos for any type of underground work that we do.
Okay, it's the same one that's listed on your proposal here.
It's the same company as the lining
Yeah.
company.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we have reasonably quick access to video the pipe. You said 1 to 2 weeks or 2 to 3?
No, I would say within 2 weeks, within 2 weeks would be reasonable.
And I'm just trying to, the way your proposal is written, it's a little unclear to me. On item 1, and last time it was $9,295 plus 25% markup on materials per day. Wait a minute, I don't,
Yeah, this just gives you a summation, but this is all out, you need to start from scratch,
no,
correct?
I'm looking at the new one, the new proposal, and
Well,
it's,
the new proposal comes
It's in the
to.
blue.
Mayor Wilson, I think the,
$354,950, but it's moot because he's got these big holes, so this isn't gonna work.
sorry to interrupt, but the unit rate on number 1 of James's proposal, the unit cost did not change, 9,295 plus 25% markup. What did change is that in the first iteration, they estimated between 6 and 8 days
Yeah, I
of
see
work,
that.
and now it's 10 days.
right.
And then the cost of the lining also went up from the previous iteration. So that's just a much bigger number now.
But on item 1, it has an item that says cost at like I just mentioned, and then there's another one right below that. Is that the total of the cost above, or is this added to it? I really not following how this is calculated, or what
Maybe
the
James.
grand total
Can
is.
I ask you, James, before we worry about this, aren't you gonna have to give us a new proposal once you've videoed it and possibly fix this section, not lining it? Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why waste time debating it when it really,
Well, I'm not
I
debating, I'm
think,
just trying to
James,
understand.
I think what Mayor Wilson is trying to gain clarity on is the difference between the first line and the second line that says 122,950. If you could explain a little bit about the backfilling with either the slurry or the sandbags to create a lineable surface, and how you're getting at the costs, including the 25% markup.
Yeah, okay. So, yeah, the 9,000, I don't have it in front of me, yeah, the 9,000 and change per day plus the 25% markup on the material. That's typically when there's a pipe that's of this, severity as far as the bottom being gone. The only way to line it is you have to create some sort of stable foundation for that bottom, which usually, depending on what the depth is, if there's just a 4 or 5 or 6 inch void underneath it, we just put sandbags. If it's like a foot or 2 feet, you have to pump slurry in there, and the slurry will come up, and then the slurry basically, or the sandbags become the bottom of that pipe, and then you line it. So typically, we give a daily cost for that, because you have no idea what you're gonna encounter until you get in there and start looking at it. And so basically what I was trying to do was, before we had these sinkholes, was a worst case scenario of, okay, it's gonna take us 10 days to prep this at the 90-something, 100 per day, plus probably, 70 yards of slurry to pump in that whole line to get it up to get where we need to be. That's just a total guess on my part, just to try to give you sort of an arbitrary number of what you're looking at. But that's hard to do, and we really don't do that, or nobody really does that on any project, because you don't know until you get in there if you have a 6-inch void or you have a 2-foot void underneath the pipe. So that's why it's usually given as a daily rate plus the materials and then the markup. And then once you get to being able to have the pipe with this foundation, then the line is easy. And the line is always found at that price, so it's just a linear footage based on the size of the pipe and how long it is.
Okay, so James, just to be clear, the first line that says cost is, I guess, a
Unit cost.
breakdown. The second line is what it would total after 10 days. Is that right?
Right.
Okay, so that's the number we should be looking at.
Yeah.
Subject to change, I get that, but we're not adding those numbers together. Okay.
No, we're not adding 9,295 to 122,950. 122,950 is the cost for item 1. 232 is the cost for number 2,
No, I
and
get-
those
I
two
know what
items should be
items
added.
are.
Yep.
That just, item 1 is subject to change, 122,950.
Yes, that is correct.
All right,
That is
thank
correct.
you. All right, so that's, but we know that this isn't even accurate because of the new
Yep.
sinkholes, so we're gonna have to pay another $3,000 for video, and then you're gonna come back with yet another proposal based on the results of the video. Okay.
Correct, and that is basically just to find out if the 3 spots where those sinkholes have popped up are, that the pipe is collapsed and it's displaced, because if it is, then, going back to originally we were talking about, then those pieces will have to be actually removed and replaced before any of this other, process can take place for the lining.
So that's gonna be another $30,000 to $50,000 for those segments.
yes, it is.
Okay.
So let's go.
Yeah, roughly, depending on how bad they are, what the video shows, it depends on how, if it's completely collapsed, then obviously that's the worst case scenario. If it's just displaced and we can dig down, bring it back up and recouple it, and then put the slurry in, then that's best case scenario. But if it's sunk and the pipe is totally collapsed and separated itself from everything else, then then obviously the cost is more, because then we have to excavate it, remove that whole stick of pipe, bring in a new one, put that in there. So that's what we'll know better though from what the video will show.
Yeah, by the way, are these 40-foot segments?
20.
Okay, thank you. All right, any other questions?
I have a question about, and talks about the exclusions, and engineering is one of the areas, and I understand that being excluded, but is that implying that engineering does need to be done, or do you not know whether it needs engineering until you've seen more with your video, or what's your best, and I know it's only a best guess, but what's your best guess about the need for engineering on something like this?
Yeah, I don't think it needs engineering. I just put that in there as an exclusion because there's some, I know you don't have a spec necessarily, but there's some cities and also the county that when you do, if you do any sort of storm drain work or lining, after you do it, they want like engineering calcs, like calculations that show, okay, well, you can take this amount of volume of water now and this is the size of the pipe, and basically kind of as part of a closeout document, they want something from an engineering firm that gets all those calculations. So that's why I excluded as far as my bid. But as far as it needing to be engineered to the point of how to construct it, no, I don't think that's going to be an issue.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other questions? And if not, I'll entertain a motion.
Comments from the public?
Oh, sorry, public comment? Brad? Thank you. Oh,
Well, just real quick, it's a tangential public comment, but you may, or Alfred Visco, 15th Century, you may or may not be aware, but the association has determined that there's 14 of these stormwater pipes that they're going to take jurisdiction over.
there's 14,
14 of the stormwater pipes in the city that they're going to take jurisdiction over.
great,
Because
why
it
don't
was
they
put
take
in
it
by
over
the-
this one?
Because, no, not this one.
No, not
Because
this
they found that it was in by the original developer. So I don't know how many that leaves are like the orphans. I don't know, so.
We're working on it.
Okay, thank you. I'll bring it back to council for discussion or motion.
Well, I would move that we direct staff to authorize the video of the pipe and bring us a report regarding that so we can have information, and with any estimates of repair, so we can make information at that time.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
I just have one question for staff. Elaine, with your engineering background, does it sound like we're proceeding in the right direction? I mean, my inclination is that I would vote to do this, but does it seem sensible?
Yeah, I think it's a necessary step to figure out what the scope of repair is. I just think that if we could get the video sooner than later in the timeframe that we discussed, it's going to be much better. We have residents who are calling every day to find out what's the status on the repair on the sinkhole. Additionally, I think that there were also reports of residents walking in the area and that they've had a fall, due to the soft soil above the pipe lining.
This did happen, you said?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
Is it coned off or?
Yeah, they did a nice job.
we called the association to make sure that they cone off the entire length of this drainage system, just to avoid anybody walking on top of it. We don't know what that would be.
I agree with the urgency of getting the video done. So James, I hope you're hearing that part of the conversation. We're about to vote on this to move forward with it, but we would really appreciate your involvement in moving this forward as quick as possible before we get another one. Anyway, I hope you can hear my comments.
Yeah, I can, thank you.
Okay.
And I was going to, I know there was a motion and a second, and let's vote on it, but I wonder if the council would entertain a cap amount on the video such that if we get a proposal from James the next day and that they can have the crews move on getting the video done, that I have the authority to execute that as soon as possible, rather than having to bring that back to council and say, hey,
No, I totally agree. Would you like to put a cap on your motion?
Well, the
And I recommend
cap he mentioned-
3,500, just so we don't have to,
He mentioned that it was 2,500 to 3,200,
Right.
so say no more than 3,300 at the most.
all right, so the motion's been amended to direct staff to proceed with the video process, not to exceed 3,300. You okay with that addition? Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, James.
Thank you, James.
Thank
and
you.
Please bring us back good news.
And quickly.
Yes.
We want it good and quick.
Okay, so that takes us to 13A. Who's presenting?
I will present this one. Thank you. Okay. Good evening again, Mayor and Council. Item before you tonight is specific to two pieces of equipment we have here on site that are used day in and day out by staff that have reached their natural end of life or are nearing the end of life. So the first being our postage machine, and the second being our digital color system, our copier, printer, scanner. As you'll see in here with the history, you have, since June 2013, you've replaced the printer 2 times. So we are coming up on the same time frame, about a 5-year period. As a result of negotiating with CBE, who is one of our preferred vendors already, we have been able to negotiate a price of $10,945 for a purchase, or $14,652.54 for a lease. Staff is recommending regarding this to follow the same protocol you have done in the past 10 years, which would be to make a purchase. We do have the ability to save an additional $1,000 by trading in the existing machine, and that would apply whether you leased it or purchased it. But if you were to purchase, your cost would be $9,945. We have also been able to negotiate with them to match our existing maintenance pricing. So currently, we are charged on a per copy basis, or a per print basis, if you will, for black and white and color. And CBE matched the pricing that we have had for the past 5 years, as opposed to making it higher, which would be pretty standard. So, and then that service agreement, which you would be authorizing the city manager to execute, would be a 5-year agreement, much like we have right now. The postage machine was a lease. It was a 3-year lease, and that expired last year. So we are paying the same pricing, even though the term expired, we're still paying that same pricing. What you'll see is in the staff presentation here is quotes for a 36, a 48, and a 60-month lease. Staff is recommending going with the 60-month lease at a cost of $142.30 for the year 1, and then a cost of $176.33 for years 2 through 5. Our current postage machine will be non-compliant with United States Postal Service digital issues for what is allowable. The new machine would be compliant well beyond the term that we are asking to do it. There will be a monthly savings from what we have right now, and going back to some of our budget discussions about trying to save money here and there, of $77.88 or $935 roughly annually for year 1, and then a monthly savings of $43.85 or $526.20 annually for years 2 through 5. So staff would respectfully request that you approve as presented, and we are, of course, available for questions.
Okay, questions for Christian?
I do. The purchase we made last time in September of 2018 was comparable, but if we replace it, it's going to be less than 5 years that we had it. So in terms of that, if you're doing a 63-month lease and figure out that we're actually going to keep it only 4.5 years, wouldn't leasing be, I haven't done the math, but wouldn't that be more cost advantageous and give us the option to trade a machine if there's a problem with the machine, because we're not leasing, we don't own that particular machine, but we have a service with the company.
Whether you purchase it or lease it, you'll have a service agreement on it where anything that would go wrong with it, hypothetically, would be taken care of. It doesn't matter whether it's purchased or leased. The service agreement still covers it.
Well, maybe to repair it, but they won't totally take out a machine that you purchased and give you a brand new one.
No, I think a machine would have to be completely a lemon for them to do a 100% replacement.
They're not going to take it back early on a lease.
Yeah.
The lease obligates you to the term, whatever it is, and just because you don't like it or it's not working the way you want, they have a service agreement that obligates them to do certain things, whatever those are, but you can't just cancel a lease, because they're not gonna accept it back early. Or if you do, they're gonna accept the lease payments to go through the end of the term anyway.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if it's a little bit, given the fact we don't keep it, to the term of 63 months for our purchase. I'm just.
Well, we very well could. I think one thing we should note is that the usage by staff of the machines has increased over the past 10 years, right? So you made a switch from a black and white machine to a black and white / color machine. So our print amount continues to grow, especially with the amount of blue newsletters that are put out for the community. John's team, with public notices, it is a heavily used machine. And so we're already, I think, at the same amount of prints now, a little bit early, coming up on the 5 years, as you were when you had already hit the 5-year mark the last time. So the machines just take quite a bit of a beating. I think, though, it would be hard for staff to recommend the lease pricing just because of the cost savings by purchasing it outright versus the lease amount and the interest payments.
And then on page 128, it looks like the actual agreement that they presented to us has the $10,945 and then tax added on, but the notes say that this, that the $1,000 trade-in allowance is included in the pricing, which makes it sound like we are saying it's going to cost $10,945, but it's really, and you're saying it's going to be $9,945, but it's really $10,000.
That is my understanding, that the $1,000 comes off the price that we were quoted of $10,945.
Well, I'm just saying what it seems to indicate here, so you didn't ask him specifically about that.
Well, it does say the $1,000 trade-in allowance on the old CAM copier is included in the pricing. So we're not gonna get $1,000 off the $10,945.
It doesn't show it in a line item here, but it puts it in the
It's in the notes.
I will have to go back to CB and check that, because the $1,000 off was something I negotiated after they had given me the price, so I'll just have to double check with them on that.
Maybe we approve this subject to that clarification?
If you so choose.
Okay.
And then just quickly about other vendors, I know there's lots of copiers and vendors of copiers. I mean, do we check with anybody else besides
Well,
this vendor?
I did check with our existing vendor, which is Konica Minolta, and the previous rep that the city had was no longer there. The new rep was not extremely helpful, but their pricing was actually higher, and they were a bit more. And some of the issues that we were trying to solve with this printer, which mainly one of the new additions to this is that it would be able to fold within the machine. Right now, the city staff has a multi-step process, especially for putting together newsletters, where we print, and then we fold, and then we apply postage. And we're trying to cut out steps to make our workflow a bit smarter. And so the Konica machine did not do that.
Any other questions? Public comment? All right, bring it back to council. Is there a motion?
I would make a motion that before I do that, just some discussion amongst us. Do you want my motion to be to approve it subject to the $1,000?
That's what I'd like, yeah.
Or do we want to say, come back to us, bring it back? I make a motion that we approve this subject to the $1,000
Being deducted from.
being deducted
From
from that.
Okay.
page 28.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you. 13B, receive and file potential financing plan for City Hall ADA improvements construction.
Council, this project keeps coming back, but tonight's discussion isn't about the scope of work. It's about how to finance it as we get closer to finishing up the engineering architectural plan. So I know the staff report goes into details about the evolution of the project and what council's decisions were. So I'll just cover the very last decision that the council made, and that was on April 25th, 2022, nearly a year ago, to proceed with option 3. You don't need to know what option 3 is, but or 1 or 2, but you should know that option 3 includes expanding the front lobby into the patio. So that requires some structural work, geotechnical work, which you approved throughout the year between April and now. So where we are today is that we're nearly complete with the plans, and that if we were to move forward, the council will have to make some decisions about financing the project. The latest construction cost estimate that we got from our design team is $1.8 million for the improvements. And because of that, we wanted to get ahead of the game to have this conversation initiated about how to finance it. Previously, in 2021, January, city staff came to and presented to council the possibility of applying for a loan through the city's insurance pool, California Joint Powers Insurance Authority, or CJPIA. And at that time, I think the council was agreed to having staff submit an application to CJPIA for a loan, and the maximum loan amount at that point was $300,000. Our application was approved, and the rate of the loan that was secured was 1.91%. But because the council had reviewed lots of iteration of the design, talking about option 1 or option 2, option 3, we had to contact CJPA to delay the disbursement of the loan until such time the plans are ready to go into construction. So here we are today. So what staff did prior to coming into this meeting and having discussion is contact CJPIA, whether if they would allow staff to edit or amend our loan application for now the full amount of the project.
1.8 million?
1.8 million. Well, I would take a step back. I was at a CJPA conference recently, and I talked to a point of contact for this loan program. And at that time, my understanding was that the cost was 1.2. So I asked about 1.2 loan, which they were open to.
So they raised their limit from 300,000 to more than or as much as 1.8 million?
Yeah, well, there's a caveat to that. They want to know what portions of that total amount is ADA related, and that they're willing to fund the cost of ADA upgrades. So if we were just switching out carpet for the sake of switching out carpet, they wouldn't want to fund, or they wouldn't want to loan us money for that line of work.
What about HVAC?
I don't want to speak for them, Mayor Wilson. I will inquire. I don't think that that's a part of the ADA upgrade. So tonight isn't asking you to make a decision, because the final plans, after going through plan check through the building department, won't be available until the end of June this year. Is at that time where you'll have to decide whether if you want to move forward with the construction of the project or not. But if you do want to seek a loan, CJAPI suggests that we amend our application as soon as possible, provide them with the eligible costs so that they can have their executive committee review the loan application and give us an answer. So here tonight is asking council for your input on a potential financing plan for the project. But talking about the financing plan, you really have a couple of more shots at this during the budget process, and/or after the engineering and architectural plans are complete. You can still make a decision as to what you want to do.
What's the current interest rate?
Let's see. That I don't know, and I don't think it was available from the CJPI before coming into this conversation. So I'm sorry.
What do they have for security? I mean, what?
What we pledge? Well, this building and the city's assets, which really is
City's what?
assets.
Building.
This building, right, is pledged against the loan.
Other questions?
I had asked Elaine about this, because I kind of wanted to, I couldn't recall the exact numbers.
Yeah.
We first talked about item 3, I thought the estimate was 750, then it was 1.2, now we're at 1.85. And I think on the email I read, it says that the front area is gonna have to be redone, so clearly that's not the end. So I wanna see how accurate my memory was, because Elaine was gonna look it up for me. At what point do we wanna revisit? I was very much in favor of item 3, but not at 1.85 and counting. So, I wanna, at some point, I'm gonna be voting against the 1.85 expenditure when the time comes, and counting. At what time do we start possibly looking at just fixing the bathrooms?
So,
By the way, my entire house, demolishing an old house, grading, putting in a new pad in the house, cost not much more than this.
It's a few years ago.
10. I don't think that construction is quadrupled in 10 years. We're putting in a wall and 2 bathrooms and redoing the vacuum, the HVAC.
Mayor Wilson, Councilmember Black and I spoke earlier today, and he wanted me to dig up some figures that were presented to the council. I didn't really have time to get this distributed. I just have a copy in front of me that I took a look while the meeting was going on. Back in July of 2020, there was option 1, and there was option 2. Option 1 was to renovate 3 restrooms and some other improvements at City Hall. And the figure from 2020 was 671,000 and change.
How much?
671,000 and change. Option 2 just included taking the existing restrooms where they're at, I think making them into 3 all-gender restrooms, if I recall. And that construction cost back in July 2020 was 268,000 and change.
And
So.
then it went to 1.2.
The,
We added the wall. It was a little better
yes,
project.
right. So the 1.2 is what I got back in January when we had some structural costs. And today, Most recently, this week, I got from the engineering team that it would be 1.8 estimated. And of course, I want to say that engineering estimates always include a bunch of contingencies in there, you know, just to make sure we cover all of our bases.
That's the and counting part, Jim, right?
Because they said in it that the front has to be redone because it's not ADA compliant, which I don't understand because that sidewalk slope of it clearly is, but maybe the width of it is not.
Well, that hedge growing into it, I think that, that's an easy fix, just trim back the hedge to widen the usable space of the sidewalk, but,
Well,
I don't.
they didn't say that. They said it probably has to be regraded and redone. But anyway, that was just, I wanted to make sure people realize it's happening and people can do it, they vote however they want, but
Okay, what we're voting on now is just to
Right.
direct staff to
to
explore.
pursue financing.
Right.
And if I'm not gonna vote for the entire project, why vote for financing? So that's my point, but you guys can vote for project.
We haven't agreed on the, well, I guess we have.
Well, if you're voting for financing, you're planning on doing the project.
Well, to some degree.
Do something.
The bathroom, we can just pay for.
Well, I mean, to maintain
You know,
flexibility,
hold on a
this
second.
takes a process.
I was asking for questions for Elaine, and now we're discussing public comment.
You don't want to hear what I'm going
Bringing it back to council.
You don't want to hear what I'm going to say.
Back to council. Okay, so the discussion continues.
Well, I think it would be helpful to know what the JPIA will do, and just so you know what our options are.
What's the word? It's a loan.
I-
Okay, it's
no, I
not someone
understand.
giving you money, you're gonna pay them
No,
back.
I
for
get
your
that.
children or your children's children, let's make sure.
And we need to know what the interest rate is, so we need to know the terms. And just to, it doesn't bind us to accept it. It just gives us information with which to go on, and that may give us pause about how much we want to do, but we don't know until we ask.
I agree with B.
Don't act so surprised, please.
Just being pleasant about it.
Can I know that what's on here is just talking about the financing. So after just going to my Brown Act training, which I sat through last week, Pat did our Brown Act training, so I kind of refurbished my understanding of certain things. I want to make sure, can I ask a question about something that Councilmember Black said for clarification, because it will depend, that will reflect, that will impact how I would vote on this.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
And then if I ask it and you go, no, you can't, then I'll withdraw it,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
Are you saying, Jim, if I'm understanding you, that you might actually be thinking that we would go all the way back to going back and
Just doing the bathrooms.
reconsidering it completely, not doing anything else?
Well, there could be the counters too, that has to be done. I mean, there are certain items, the bathrooms, the counters.
Okay, you can buy a counter that's a little bit lower and a little bit wider. It's not gonna cost you 1.8 million in counter. But people can vote however they want, but I'm just
Yeah.
telling you,
I'm just-
the numbers are obscene and the way they've gone, I was wrong. I thought it was 750, then 1.2, I was wrong. 630, 1.2, 1.85, and not done. So, you know,
Okay, so, someone like to make a motion?
Well, I would make a motion that we ask staff to explore with the California JPIA an amendment of the application and get their proposal for what loan they would provide with the specifics.
Is there a second? I'll second that. All right. Call for the vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed?
no.
Okay, 3-1. Okay, takes us to matters from the city council. Okay, this is 14A, discuss FAA's 2 new departure procedures imposed by RPV and LAWA. So this was brought to my attention I'm not even sure, I don't remember where I saw this. You know where it came from?
It was an email from Christian to the city council by the way of the RPV staff,
Right, okay.
letting South Bay cities know.
Thank you. So I hope you've had a chance to read this. I mean, it's really interesting. The airport is opposing the FAA's, I guess this is a proposal. RPV went on record to also oppose it. They kind of mimicked the, excuse me, the LAWA letter, but I'm bringing it to our council because if you look at the flight plan information, I mean, it's not real easy to understand, but I mean, you can see the lines that go, if not through our city or above our city, adjacent to it. So basically, I wanted to bring it up and see if there was interest in also writing a letter, potentially opposing this project or proposal like our RPV did.
Sure.
And after we open it up for, for public comment, I want to hear what the
Okay.
public has to say. But
I don't know if there's any questions at this point. I don't really have the answers. I mean, you've read the same information that I did, so I'll open up public comment. Bring it back to council, okay? So discussion?
I have a question. B, have they brought this up at COG?
You know, they have it.
Okay.
It's interesting.
Okay.
I think because it's primarily a peninsula issue. I mean, it's not.
I just wondered if COG was sending it.
No.
It didn't come up in the last
I've not
meeting.
heard
so
anything.
That's the only one I've attended. Okay, anybody else? All right, so I'll entertain a motion.
I would make a motion that we write a letter in opposition as well.
Second.
Okay. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Citing similar concerns, yeah.
Okay.
Is that staff direction enough?
Yes, I want to just have an open dialogue about motions. I think in my time here in Rolling Hills, a lot of times motions are made, and it looks like, hey, the vote's gonna be called for, but then a council member will chime in on something else. And it's not really clear whether if that was part of the motion or not part of the motion. And I think that creates some confusion on the staff when we're either reading the minutes or, revisiting the recording. And so,
I get it. So let's just stay with the motion. and
Yeah, so I
extraneous
thought-
comments
right.
were not considered.
I think it'd be helpful if council, the motion maker, makes the motion. And if you wanted to talk about it some more, that you call for discussion, rather than have the motion kind of run where a couple people chime in on the sentence itself, and then for people to kind of think like, wow, that was part of the motion, when that's not how we took it. So I'm
I'll
just
try to be
saying,
better about controlling that aspect of it. The motion's made, voted on, boom, done, and then
yes, that would be very helpful too.
comments made after
Yeah.
that aren't part of the motion.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
I would ask if we're doing that, we should be pretty concise on the motion and specific. Sometimes the motion is not as specific, and that's the problem. If we're making a motion, it should be, just from the nature of the motion, clear as to what is being asked to do.
Well, you're asking that of the motion maker, and I can't make somebody be more concise about it when they're making a motion and then it's second and we vote on it.
Yeah, so my motion really wasn't very good, because my motion was that we would write a letter in opposition, and I didn't really say, following the format of the RPV letter, so I
Want a
did
do-over?
not do a good, can we do a do-over?
Can we?
Yes, you can.
And what's the procedure for that?
The motion maker and the second, and the individual who seconded the motion must accept, as long as it's at the same meeting, it can be a motion for reconsideration.
Okay. Who calls for that? The motion maker?
Correct, it has to either be the motion maker or the
So
individual
would you
who.
like to make a motion for reconsideration?
I would like to make a motion for reconsideration to restate the motion.
I second that. Any discussion?
No.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All right, so now let's do over.
I would like to make a motion that we direct staff to send a letter in opposition of the FAA's proposal and follow the format, or follow the points cited in the RPV letter.
And
Second.
how about the Los Angeles World Airport letter too? I mean, we have both of them.
So, yeah. Once again, that this is so there was a motion and a second, and then now the discussion is to, I view that as a friendly amendment, or at least a request at a friendly amendment, to include also the LAWA, if I'm butchering that name, letter as well.
Is this time for discussion, or?
Yeah.
So I read both letters, and I think RPV captured the important elements of that apply to us. So it doesn't seem to me that that the staff's letter needs to reference both letters. I think the RPV letter summarizes it in a way that is meaningful to our city. So that's.
All I'm saying is we give them latitude to take information from both letters, to craft a letter that hopefully the
So
FAA
that-
will consider, that's all.
Understand, that's your friendly amendment, and then it's up to the motion maker.
Well, and I don't accept the friendly amendment because the enclosure on the RPV letter did the LAWA letter to FAA is enclosed with it. So by enclosing it, it's referenced.
Okay, so long as they have the ability to get that, use the information in there to include.
So my motion would,
Yeah, the friendly amendment has been rejected.
yes.
And then we have a second to the original motion. All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Unanimous, thank you. Matters from staff, I don't see anything unless something came up. Okay, then we will now recess to closed session.
I would ask on a matter of council that we would clarify when we have items in the blue folder, what the changes are. I was looking,
That was asked earlier,
that was asked earlier.
yeah, in the meeting.
Asked earlier, going forward, we do that?
Yes, because I've looked through while we're in the meeting here at the bills, the check run, it doesn't appear to be any different than the one we had in the packet.
We talked about it.
We talked about it, and he said going forward that they would highlight it. And that the only thing on the bills was Elaine's signature.
Okay, what about the minutes then? The minutes look the same too.
There was one minor change where the word unanimously was removed when it was not a unanimous vote.
And we discussed the overall remedy to that, which is to highlight the changes going forward.
Okay, well, I didn't realize that there was a motion to that effect.
It wasn't,
Oh,
it was a discussion.
Okay, all right, but instead, do we need a motion to do that?
It was just direction. We'll make sure we do.
All right, closed session?
Yep, recess, closed session.
And you guys don't have to turn the mics off anymore either.
Yeah, well, it's ominous.
Okay, just so the new system.
Did you do any open mic?
It's a Christian, we're back and we're good.
You are back live.
Mr. Mayor, is now a good time for my closed session report.
Please proceed.
The city council recessed into closed session pursuant to the item listed on the agenda at 9:16 PM. The council reconvened into open session at 9:29 PM, and no reportable action was taken. Mr. Mayor, this concludes my report.
Again, I'd like to adjourn the meeting.
To the memory of
Oh, I'm
Lisa.
sorry. Yeah, I don't know, those of you that knew Lisa Hanson.
Yeah.
Close friend of mine, and my personal relationship goes back many, many years, but she was a member of the Friends of Betty Museum, which I'm continuing to be board member. She was president for a couple years, I was president after her. She was one of the most generous people I've ever known, and even in little ways, I mean, in big ways with the Lord's Foundation, obviously. The little things that she did for individuals or small groups, it was just, astounding how she would always be ready to, support somebody for $500 or $2,500. It was a pleasure and an honor to know her. I knew her husband as well. He happens to be in the trucking business. If you've ever seen these auto carriers that say Hanson Transport or something like that, that's him. And it was just, devastating when I heard. I had a feeling she'd been ill, and she had been, but I was not expecting the news last week or the week before her passing. So anyway, I wanted to speak about her a little bit. She was a very important person to me, and I was devastated when I found out that she had passed. So,
Had you heard that she'd been on life support at home? Yeah, I found that out about a week before. She had a massive coronary, I guess.
Well, I talked to her husband. Her husband called me of all things. I mean, it's just not the way it should be. I should have been calling him, offering him comfort and support. He called me to make sure that I knew, which I did. I actually found out through the staff at the museum. But for him to take the time to call me and let me know what had happened, and to share with me how important the Bang Museum was to her and to her mother as well, Harlan was. They were very, very generous donors, and it was just nice to see the support in Wilmington from the PD-based people. So it meant a lot to me personally, but her husband just wanted to assure me that she had a very special place in her heart for the Bang Museum, which is special to me as well.
I was just, when you were gonna say it, I was just gonna raise my hands to say about that, so I didn't know all that about her, but, just adjourn and remember, so I appreciate you doing
Well, I asked what that number forgot to do again, so I'm sorry about that. Okay. So we will adjourn in Lisa's memory.
Did you grow up with her, Jim?
Yeah,